Everyone, it's time for another Bhagavad Gita video, and today I'm focusing on just a single verse. It's chapter 6, verse 20, and it goes like this. In that state where mental activities cease, being distinguished from the essential through yoga, a pure soul, aware of the soul, becomes fulfilled by the soul. This is a very interesting verse. And it kind of culminates, if you looked at the last two videos, you had the first of those was talking about the technique, the practice of meditation, right? This chapter it's entitled The Yoga of Meditation, of dhyana being the meditation of concentration. And it talks about how to do it, the actual practice of how to do it. And then the second video, the one that was just before this one, talked about the conditions of how you should act in general in your life in order for it to be the most prosperous state for that meditation to succeed. And there it was talking a lot about the middle path, about creating harmony in yourself by not going to one extreme or to the other, but by remaining balanced in how you act and in the proportion to which you have active spiritual practice combined with an engagement with the world, that you bring that practice into the world. And so here in this verse, it says that in the state where mental activities cease, this is the moment where it's not necessarily about, because one of the mistakes people make in meditation is they think, oh, I have to quiet my mind, right? And that is not what you're being told in dhyana. Dhyana doesn't actually tell you anything about what to do with the mind, right? It says focus the mind on a single point, right? And in the case of Krishna's version of this type of meditation, he says in verse 13. Looking only at the tip of your nose, right? So it's saying basically to put all your concentration on the tip of your nose. Now there are other versions of this, right? That put the concentration at some other spot, or in some other way. You might be looking at a specific point in front of you, right? In Chan meditation, you're sitting looking at a wall, right? But the purpose is the same. The idea is you're engaging in concentration with a point. But the message here in Krishna's understanding, and it's the correct understanding as far as I would say, is that you're not being told to try to force your mind to shut up, because that doesn't work, right? A quiet mind doesn't happen through your mental effort to try to quiet it. And having the achievement of a quiet mind in the sense of the mind making no noise in terms of background talk or something like that is not really useful. What is useful is to remain present in what you're doing, to show up, to be at that point in the center where time interacts with spirit, right? Which is the present moment, and not to get lost in your thoughts. But those thoughts can just be there. But there comes a point, if you develop sufficiently in any meditation practice that has to do with focusing, with a focused concentration. So in Chi breathing, for example, which is the most basic practice of Qigong, and you can see my video in the Yifa playlist where I talk about how to do Chi breathing. It's a very simple and very useful way to engage in this kind of meditation. You're focused not on the tip of the nose, but on the dantian point, which is a point just below the belly button. And you engage in focusing on that point in order to remember where you are, to be present, to be here and now. And if you develop with this practice enough, instead of having to think about being distracted or something, when you become physically present enough in where you are, you're connecting to your body, you're connecting to the space around you, you're connecting to the place and time where you are, then you reach a state where the first part is where the noise that might be going on in your head keeps going further and further into the background, right? It can be happening back there, but it's like it's something that's coming from outside of you, right? Normally, for most people, their mental, the primacy that we give our mental state over our bodies, especially people in the West, is such that we tend to associate ourselves centered into the mind. So whatever thoughts we're thinking in our head are like the foremost thing. And so we might actually be looking at something around us, but we're inside the head making that inner monologue of our minds, right? And not being first and foremost in the space. We're first and foremost in our heads. So the first thing that happens in meditative practice is that you have a shift from that, where instead, first and foremost, you're in yourself, in your whole body. And this is a very big deal for people who are meditators, is to be able to connect to experiencing themselves not as a big head that's just there, but as the whole of their physical body. And it's why, in particular, I think a lot of the Western techniques, especially some of the New Age techniques that go, they talk about, oh, see, be up here with the white light and you are not the body. That's the worst garbage that you can do in terms of being able to particularly tackle the challenges of the Western spiritual alienation from our physical selves. We are in a civilization that's so cerebral compared to other cultures through time and history, that the worst thing you can tell someone is don't be in the body, right? Don't be of the body. Just be an ascended spirit or some nonsense like that, right? You need to be reconnecting to your body, to your physicality, and when you do that, then the mind suddenly starts to be something that's somewhere back there, right? That's in the chatter. You could be having a conscious thought of the moment of something you have to do, but that's usually something that's automatic. It's that monologue, that inner monologue that just rambles on in most people's heads. It becomes more distant. It goes further and further away. And then there comes another state beyond that where all of it, including that monologue, you could say, is just completely integrated into the space of where you are. So you're not forcing yourself to quiet the mind, but rather the mind becomes itself engaged completely in the space that you're in, right? That's this Zen state, we could call it. And there, the non-essential has been distinguished from the essential through yoga. Now remember, the word yoga means union. It is to yoke something together. It's to hitch something together, right? So yoga is fundamentally, it has nothing to do with stretching, right? It's fundamentally about connecting that which has become disconnected, yourself from the world, right? The physical, we imagine ourselves as something apart from the rest of the world, self-referencing and separating, abstracting ourselves from being in the world. And in yoga, the point is to be able to reconnect so that there's only one thing. There isn't us and the world, there's us and the world, right? Where we're in the world as a complete part of it. And so this means that the non-essential vanishes. Anything that isn't actually essential vanishes. And what is essential is completely connected in this time and space, in the present, in showing up in the moment. And then it says, a pure soul, aware of the soul, becomes fulfilled by the soul. So it's all the same thing, right? The work of yoga is really just about recognizing that this union has always been there. It's not that you're making something happen that wasn't happening. It's that you're realizing something that has always been present and that you have been unable to experience because of a disconnection within your consciousness. So it's always there. You've always been united, and you always are united to everything in reality. You are fundamentally a part of manifested reality. And there is no part of you that isn't a part of manifested reality. You only can imagine that there might be, or you feel like you're not all a part of this connectedness because of a separation created by consciousness. So a soul is, in this context, it's not talking about some kind of spirit that isn't a part of that union. Because that's the first mistake, is this idea, we are spiritual beings living in a body, or that there's some spiritual world that is more real than the material world. No, there is no separating the spiritual and material world. It is all one world. It is all the same thing, right? It is all in the manifested reality. And so the soul is, in this context, the essence of your being that has always wanted to be united. And in discovering the truth of that, it is also, the soul is also that which you have to understand in order to become united. And in that context, the soul is also the thing you are uniting to. As within, so without. If you can find the harmony within yourself by becoming